Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another bite-sized episode from the Rumcast. This is our semi-blind review series where Will and I, we engage in a little bit of a back-and-forth tasting where one of us knows the rum that's being tasted and one of us does not. And in this case, today, the one who does not is Mr. Will Hookinga, and I have prepared a rum for him to taste and to nose and to start talking about without knowing where it is from, what it is, or anything really about it. So always fun to do these, always difficult, as I've been on the other end of this and know. So Will, you have a sample here. It was decorously labeled 14.
I want to show you something. I've leveled up.
Oh,
I've got the little I don't know I forget what you call these things. It's the
topper?
little glass thing that you put on top of a tasting glass. For two reasons. One, it prevents, because usually we do a couple of these at a time. So this has been sitting here next to me for 30 minutes or so. I didn't want to get any early wafts of the nose. So anyway, I'm now removing that.
A coin?
So,
could it be a glass coin? I don't know.
There's a name for it. I feel like such an idiot for not thinking of it. And the only time I've ever done a judge, like a tasting judging at a competition, I accidentally dropped one on the floor and shattered it. Shout out to ACSA. I'm sorry, I broke one of your things. I wasn't the only one, by the way. Other people did it. There's a lot of them.
Were you the first?
That's a good question. I don't remember. I haven't been asked back, so maybe I was the first.
They put a little X next to your name there. You dropped that.
By the way, John, I have to ask: is this a sample for ants? Like, what? You couldn't spare a little bit more? This is all that I get. Was this like a half ounce?
So I will say in full transparency, I don't own the bottle of this. I have a sample and gave you half the sample.
Okay, that makes more sense. That's forgivable in that case.
Yeah.
Well, this is a pale golden rum. Yeah. It's actually similar in color to the last semi-blind rum that you sent me, which was the Down Island Ghana rum.
You're right.
Which is about 4 years old. So
wouldn't that be shitty of me if I sent you the same rum twice in a row?
The same one? I would be so mad at that. And I like definitely would not guess it either. You know, that would be the most annoying part.
I'll save you the trouble. I did not do that.
Okay. Well, that's
like
one.
Against the spirit of this. Like, we wouldn't do that.
Only need to eliminate a couple thousand more before I know what it is. All right.
Yeah, I was going to say, while you go in to nose it, why don't I also just remind everybody of all of the things we're going to try to pull out of this from the blind reviewer. And I'll talk a little bit about my thoughts on it as we go as well, knowing what it is, but without trying to lead you into any possible guesses. So we're going to go over age. We're going to talk about source material, whether it's, cane juice or molasses or something different. What still type it was distilled on. The proof. The origin, which is one of the most difficult things, the price for it, and then would you buy it or not before we get to a final guess. So those are the categories we'll go through, and I'm watching as Will is intensely nosing this right now in his glass and is going to give us some thoughts.
So this feels very familiar.
Okay.
But also peculiar in a way. It's beguiling me.
Beguiling is usually a good word. That means
is that the right usage of that?
It's wooing you. You're beguiled. Yeah.
Yeah. But so it's like there's an air of mystery to it, It's hitting me with a few things at once. There are some sweet honey, graham cracker elements to it, but there's some fruity elements. There's some savory elements. It's just throwing a lot of things at me right away.
Okay.
There's this kind of green, minty / like fresh bell pepper vibe from it a little bit.
Wow. I get the bell pepper now that you've said it. I didn't get that out of it before. I definitely get a vegetal thing.
It's kind of like a crisp, fresh vegetable, that's like a little juicy, but not vegetal in like a rum agricole kind of way to me right now, at least. Like I just on the nose, I lean more toward this being a molasses rum than a cane juice rum, but I also fucked that up the last time I did one of these. And so now I'm like shook about my ability to identify cane juice rums versus molasses rum. So yeah, it's almost
let's start with are you enjoying the nose?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, beguiling. It's eyeing me from across the room, and I'm like, oh, hey, what's this?
The most beautiful rum in the room. Could you be? I get the honey graham cracker notes that you mentioned also. It's easy for me to follow up once you've labeled it, but
sure.
I do think you're right about there's a strong honey I get on this.
Yeah.
And it's pleasant. Yeah.
It doesn't strike me as a particularly punchy, high proof nose. It's easygoing, approachable, something familiar in here about it. I feel like it's something I've had before, you know?
Okay.
All right. I'm going to go in for a little taste.
Okay.
I'm dying over here, John.
Yeah.
I'm dying because I know I've had this before or something from wherever this is from, and it's eluding me as to what it is.
Yeah.
And I feel like that almost makes it harder when you feel like you've had it before.
Yeah. Because your brain is trying to find the match.
Mm. Yes.
Yeah. That's how I felt in the last semi-blind review we did with the Roulaison. I was trying to place it. I knew I had it before and just couldn't quite get there.
So I'll talk about age first because it doesn't taste like a super young rum, but it also doesn't taste like an old rum.
It's a middle-aged rum.
It's a middle-aged rum. I want to put it in that kind of like 5 to 8 year range where I feel like it's had time to absorb some of those cask characteristics, but also the rum underneath is still very much here. Like there's a lot going on that feels to me more like fermentation forward notes as opposed to just a very cask driven rum. Not a super long finish. And I get a little bit more towards the cask characteristics at the end, that honey, that graham cracker.
I agree with you on the finish. Anything else sticking out to you with the cask characteristics? Or
honestly, it strikes me as ex-bourbon aging. Like I don't get anything that makes me think it's unconventional cask type. Doesn't seem like new oak to me. It doesn't seem that heavy-handed. I would think that these are probably well-used barrels that it's been in. But man, this is really torturing me as to what this is.
So let's start. You've nosed it. You've tasted it a few times now. Are you willing to plant your flag on a source material? Is this a cane juice rum? Is this a molasses rum? Something different?
Let me come back to that.
Okay.
Let's do proof.
You just passed. You went pass. Okay, proof. Let's talk proof.
I think this is about the 50% range.
Okay.
Somewhere right around 50. It's interesting, though, because I feel like it drinks lower than that, but I'm basing that more off of the strength of flavor in the rum as opposed to kind of the alcohol burn or something like that. Yeah. It's very flavorful.
I get that.
But not a super, super long evolving finish or anything.
Right.
Which makes me think... That's part of why I think it's not like a super long aged rum or anything. And the color, although it could be a long aged rum in Scotland, perhaps.
Speaking of Scotland, are you starting to think any place, origin, area of the world?
The trouble is that I'm so zoned in on the fact that I've had this before. Or the assertion that I've had this before, I should say. I can't quite claim it as fact yet. That it's just like racking my brain. There's a few things that have popped to mind for me. One, for some reason, is Haiti. It has some of those earthy, savory elements to it that remind me a little bit of Clarins.
Right,
or
maybe Clarins.
Maybe even Distillery Port-au-Prince, you know? Is that what it reminds me of? It's got an herbal quality to it. And it's almost like it's between molasses and cane juice for me, which is also why my mind is going like, is this cane syrup? Like, could it be? This is... I'm saying this is hard should be a 4-letter word on these episodes.
We're not allowed.
Although sometimes we say 4-letter words, but I'm just saying we can't just constantly talk about how hard this is. We signed up for this shit, so...
So you're thinking, that I'm going to mispronounce it, but I remember it's something like ancien is the aged Clarins. So that kind of a thing is one possibility.
Yeah, but it doesn't strike me as quite as wild as some of those.
Right.
that I've had, which the aged ones are generally tempered from the unaged. You know, they're not quite as wild and funky.
Of course.
But also a lot of those releases had different cask types. Like there were a lot of sherry casks. There were like some ex-Corona casks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there were some that were just straight up ex-bourbon, but this doesn't strike me as that for some reason.
I will say it is surprising. The finish on this is pretty thin, which you had stated earlier, so I'm not giving anything, but I agree with you there. The finish lets me down, but I do like the nose like you did, and I also enjoy the palate on this one. So
it's got kind of like a rubber ball element to it as well.
All right, do you have a price here? Are you settling in on a price?
I don't think it's a super expensive rum. I think I'm going to say $65. I think it's one of those, mid-priced rums for rum geeks. But see, I'm having a little bit of push and pull on the source that I think this is from, because then you start thinking about like who's the bottler and how much do they usually charge for stuff and all that stuff. So I'm going to say this is a rum that I think should be priced around that 50 to 70 range. Again, I don't think it's super, super young, but I don't think it's long aged. So I don't think
you said like 5 to 8 years. Is that still where you're at?
I feel like around 5. But it could be lower than that.
Closer to 5.
I would put if the over under is at 5.5, I'm probably going to take the under. I think it's somewhere around there. So yeah, I'll say $65, 50% ABV.
You still need still type, pod column blend.
Yeah.
And the source. This is torture. This is torture for you. I see it. See your tortured face.
I feel, it just feels like a cop out to go with pot column blend.
Okay. Well, yeah, I understand.
But that's kind of what I feel like it is. Just because, that finish is kind of short. It doesn't strike me as like a very oily mouthfeel or anything like that. There's some, but it does have some heft to it. So I'm going to say some kind of pot column blend.
Okay. If it wasn't a blend, are you going pot or column? Flip the coin right now.
Pot.
What's it land? Okay.
The reason why Distillery Port-au-Prince comes to mind is because there are elements of this that remind me of the unaged Dunder and Syrup rum.
I get that.
There's almost like a slightly metallic-y hint to it.
Yeah. Yep. So you're going to go cane syrup. You're going to do it.
Here's the problem is I think this is wrong because, again, I think I've had this before, and I feel like if I landed on what it was, I would go, oh, shit, yeah, that's right. That's what it was. And I'm not getting that feeling, but there are things that give me that vibe. And so I'm just going to go with that. Yeah, I'm going to say cane syrup. Okay. I'm going to say Distillery Port-au-Prince.
I will point out strategically, it is a very difficult position to sit on because of all of the rums that are out there, that constitutes like, I don't know, I have no idea, but 1%, maybe less.
Yeah, we talked about, sometimes you have to take big specific swings, and most of the time when you get really specific, you end up being really wrong. But there's that 1% of the times that you might be exactly right. So why not go for it? This is not one of those times, I can already say. Why don't you just tell me what this is so I can go crawl in a hole?
But before I let you crawl into your hole, you're going to go with Haiti as your origin? Is that just finalizing that?
Yep.
Okay. And the last question before we reveal, would you buy it?
Not at the price point that I mentioned. It's not because it's not good. It is good. I like it. It's quality. It's just there's not something stand out to it to me. Mm-hmm. And so I would say if this were like under like 50 or under, I might think about it, but I also don't think that's a price that is congruent with what all the work that goes into this rum. So I'm not saying it's a don't buy for everyone. It's just it's not so enjoyable to me that I have to have it at that high of a price point of what I think it is, which is around 65, 70, maybe even more. So yeah.
So your final guess then, we have ex-bourbon aged 5.5 years or slightly under. Source material, it's a cane syrup.
This is torture. Just
a blend with possibly closer to pot than would be to column. 50% ABV. You're going to go with Haiti as an origin here. Price $65. And you would not buy it at that price, but if it was cheaper, you probably would. That's what I'm hearing from you.
This is the worst I've ever felt doing one of these right now. So just put me
here
out
we
of
go.
my misery.
Band-Aid's coming. Da 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 da. This is Rhum JM Martinique Fumée Volcanique from the new Atelier range. It is 49% ABV, which you pretty much nailed, by the way. And I will tell you, some other things you did get right here, actually. So this is not a total and spectacular failure, Will. You got pretty close on a lot of things here.
Don't sugarcoat it, man. Don't sugarcoat it.
I would tell you if you bombed. I don't think this is a bomb. I think you took some risks, and those didn't probably pay off as much. But I also, before I get into all the specifics, I will tell you I'm a total ass with these because I picked this one on purpose because I knew this would be hard. And it's the way that they've done this one is an extreme charred cask. So the aging on it is much less than you guessed. But do I understand why you guessed it? Yes, I do.
Right.
I was also kind of trying to wait for you to pull something of an undercurrent of like the smokiness or like there's that extreme char, like I don't know what I would call it. It's
I didn't almost really taste smoke.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's very light there.
Yeah.
But I do think I get it, and I think it's true to its name for me with it. And this is part of, as I mentioned, the series. So there's a series of 3 of them. This one's the Fumée Volcanique. There's also the Jardin Fruité and the Épices Créoles, which I'm pronouncing terribly, I'm sure. I did give you those 2 also. And in a minute, I want to go back to those 2. They're 12 and 13 next to you right now. So,
okay.
Yes. But before you could dig into those, let's talk a little bit more. So just to give you all the stats on this and get how close you got to it or how far. This is Martinique, of course. So Haiti, Martinique, you're not that terribly off there. I am surprised. I feel like this one was a cane juice rum. To me, I picked up on cane juice on this one, but I get that in this blind environment, it is really difficult. And that Fumée Volcanique style that they're doing does kind of change things a bit and give you more cask influence that clouds a little bit of the base material, even though I still think it's there. It's 100% column still, so you leaned the wrong way out of blend with that.
The wrong way there, yeah. But I also feel like this goes back to our old adage of not all column still rum is created equal. There are plenty of column still rums out there that are very flavorful, and I think a lot of rum agricoles fall into that category. Yeah. Oh, please continue.
So you're at 49% ABV. You said 50. That's nailing it.
All right.
The aging on this is 12 to 14 months spent in ex-bourbon, which you correctly identified, but extreme char. So again, understood. And if you consider that where you were at the 5 years it makes sense logically, right? So I think overall you got it. And you said you would buy it if it was cheaper. Well, the price on this, Will, is...
It is cheaper, yeah.
It is cheaper.
Way wrong on the price.
35 to 45 max. Really, it's hovering more in the 35 to 40, 41 range.
I was imagining something that was intended to be not... These, like, they put out this series, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think part of it was designed for these to be mixable, right?
That's correct. Exactly.
Yeah, and so in my head, I was like, this is something that I think is on the younger end, but is released from a producer that wants people to drink this straight, and so I think it's going to be a higher price, but I think that reflects really well on this rum because it's priced to be a high-end mixer, basically. But I think this is good enough to drink on its own.
I do too.
As we said, there is a short finish. You're not going to put this head-to-head with stuff that is at that price. Well, some stuff at that price range it's just as good as, but there's some stuff at that price range, that is going to give you that long finish, that is going to give you more of that, really complex sipping experience. But I do think this is a complex rum. And
for a 12 to 14 month aging, that's pretty complex.
It's really well executed because, again, sometimes you hear this like heavy char stuff and you expect it to just be, it's like super smoky and everything. And I bet if I went back to it, I would pick up on some of the smoke characteristics. But I also think the power of suggestion in the name, it's Fumée Volcanique, right? Right. So I think when you hear that, you go looking for
smoky volcano,
smoke, fire, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I did. I had the note lava in my head, but I didn't say it. I kept it to myself. Great. So I should have put it out there.
Yeah,
I'm lying.
Well,
of course. Lava was not a note I thought of, but
oh, that would have been great. I want to test your theory a little bit. You have the other two, and I haven't told you which one is the Jardin Fruit, and which one is the spicy Creole or Creole spices.
Okay.
So I want to just see if you can just pour out those real quick.
Wait, can you tell me what the difference is between them, or is that cheating?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of...
Well, one is called Garden Fruit, one is called Garden Fruit, and one is called Creole Spice.
Exactly, and I want you to see if you can identify which is which. So this is a little bit of a bonus here, but now you know a lot of the other characteristics because it shares the characteristics of the Fumée Volcanique.
This will be fun because I'll be able to go just off name and see which one I think matches the name. Let me run and get another glass real quick. Okay. I have number 12 and number 13 here. One of these is the
Jardin Fruité. I have no idea how to pronounce these. Garden fruits and Creole spices.
Creole spice. All right.
Épices Créoles.
Okay. Well, just off the bat, number 12, a much richer kind of nose than the one we had previously, the Fumée Volcanique. Much sweeter nose. Yeah. Yep. It almost it reminds me a little bit of Mauritius, of Gray's Distillery. It's all like I get kind of a grapefruit note.
I can see that in there. I'm smelling it right now. Yeah. Yep.
Like kind of a candied grapefruit or candied orange almost. Sounds like something in that vein. Okay, I'm gonna nose 13. That's the most subtle.
It is.
Of all the notes, all the noses. Again, it's similar to the other ones, but this one is a little bit restrained. It's not quite as adventurous of a nose as the Fumée Volcanique, I would say. It's a little more reserved.
Once again, I agree with everything you're saying. Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna try this one first because it seems like the more laid back one. Very mellow.
Yeah.
That to me feels like the one that's the closest to maybe like a more typical aged Rhum JM profile.
Completely agree. I'm doing the same thing as you, and I feel exactly the same. Again, I'm holding back just because I want to give you the room to work it out here, but I'm feeling exactly the same as you.
I'm looking for spice. Is there a spice? Maybe a little bit of kind of a spice on the back palate. Mm-hmm. Kind of like in the way a rye is spicy,
Want some rye? Of course you do.
Want some rye? All right, let me try number 12. That one just feels thicker than the other one.
You could see it.
It's tough, though, because like they're both fruity to me. I was hoping I could just be like, oh, this one's fruitier, so it must be the garden fruits, Yeah, 12 to me is just kind of juicy is how I would describe it. Let me go back to 13 one more time. Okay. Yeah, just based off how these are striking me on the palate, 13 to me has more of a spiciness, and 12 has more of a juiciness. So I'm going to say 13 is the Creole spice and 12 is the garden fruits.
So before I tell you, it's 50-50, by the way. You got 50-50 on this.
I know it's 50-50, John. You don't have to tell me. The odds are as close to being in my favor as possible, and I still might get it wrong.
I mean, it's not that easy. These are two very similarly origined rums, right? With very minor differences in how they were, casked and some of the other stats that I'm about to give you. Would it help you to know that one of them is 42% ABV, aged 2 years, and the other one is aged 3 years, 46% ABV.
That is intriguing.
So they're not exactly the same with regards to aging or ABV. By the way, I'll also tell you that the Fumée Volcanique, although we know already, was 49% ABV, so that was actually the strongest of the three. And the aging was less, that 12 to 14 months, but in the extreme char. So, with that said, I see where you're going, because the one that
means
is...
I'm wrong.
All right, well, you're wrong.
Hold on, let me tell you which one I think is the higher ABV, though.
Okay.
Is 13 the higher ABV?
It is not.
God damn it. I'm blind guessed out, John. I can't take anymore. I can't do it anymore.
Number 12 was the Épices Créoles, which is the 46% ABV and aged 3 years. Number 13 was the Jardin Fruité, which is the 42% aged 2 years. Now, I was saying that I do kind of get where you're going, because as I'm tasting these alongside of you, I get more fruitiness and just generally more out of the Épices Créoles than I do out of the Jardin Fruit, which you mentioned was kind of the closest to a standard aged cane juice rum. Yeah. And there's nothing really special to me that sticks out about it, and it's sort of fine. It's fine. The Épices Créoles, despite it being a little less in ABV than the Fumée Volcanique has a lingering finish that stays around longer for me.
Yeah.
And that finish really is where you get more of the spices. But to your point, it also has more fruitiness, I think, than the Jardin Fruit if you just do them side by side, just because I think that little bump in the ABV, we pick it up. And
yeah, that might be where it's coming through.
I think that's where you're going with it, because I can certainly see that. And had I had to do this between the two, I don't think I would have been able to tell very easily either. The
Don't
Fumée,
say that, John. You would have got it. You would have nailed it. You would have.
Maybe I would have. We'll see.
Use this opportunity to lord over me.
I would have totally figured all of these out.
We've got the fantasy draft coming up, and I'm
right.
not going to pull any punches.
Ooh. I was going to say that I know you ran out of the sample of the Fumée, but the Fumée Volcanique is wildly different than the other two to me.
It is. These two are closer. That one is kind of an outlier.
Yes.
I do. So 12 was the Creole, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think between these two, that's the one I like more.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
I'm with you.
It just has a nice richness to it.
It's also the one that is, and this is probably unsurprising, of the three, is the best reviewed by online reviewers.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense, because I feel like that's the one that gives you the best sipping experience overall. Although I will say the Fumée Volcanique, that's the one that to me feels the most kind of like off profile.
Yeah.
And it's probably because of those casks. Did you mention, by the way, what the casks were for these two? Are they the same or are they different?
Yeah, so it looks like they're both a mixture of French and American oak barrels. Okay. I'm still looking to see. I assume these are ex-bourbon, at least for the American. And
usually when it says American oak, it's going to be ex-bourbon.
Right, but they both do say barrel toasting was varied. So there's not a standard toast or char like there was with the other one, all extreme. So it does look like they're both ex-bourbon, just a mixture of French and American oak.
Well, this was certainly the journey. The journey of me being increasingly more wrong is the subtitle of this episode. So everyone enjoy. We tackled the entire Rhum GM. What is the name of this series?
Atelier.
Workshop.
Atelier.
Yeah. Atelier. Workshop?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, means workshop. Like a workshop.
Oh, that's the translation. Okay, the Atelier series. Okay, yeah, they're in the lab. They're in the lab. That's,
with a pen and a pad. Yep.
That's what all the kids say on like the summer highlights. Like the athletes from the gym, they've been in the lab. You know, they're working on new moves, new stuff, cooking
gains.
Up. Yeah, new moves. Exactly. That's what Rhum GM is doing right now. That's awesome. No, I think this is a really cool series, and I think all of these are worthwhile rums, especially if you're someone who likes to have rums on hand that are interesting mixers, but that also you can use if you just want to have it neat or throw it on the rocks, you know. I think these would slam on the rocks. I think they'd be really good. So a perfect summer rum. It's summertime right now, and I think these are all interesting and worthy of your attention. So check them out. I like them all.
Yeah. The Fumée, by the way, I think that one's a really nice rum. I'm in love with that one. And
especially
like you said,
price point.
Right at the price point, for as off profile is a highlight for me so far this year. I like what they're doing with this series. I'm kind of hoping. I don't think there's any plans when we talk to Ben Jones for him to expand the Atelier series right now, but I would like to see it continue. I'm hoping that they're getting enough traction on this at the price point that these are selling and they can continue to bring out more, maybe if it's periodic releases or however they choose to do it. So
stay in the workshop, stay in the lab, keep it coming. Get crazy with the experimentation. All right, that's all for this extended Semi-Blind Rum Review episode. As always, we would love to hear your thoughts, questions, comments. What do you think of these rums? These are pretty prevalent now. I don't know if they're pretty prevalent, but they're making their way around the United States at this point. And of course, I think they've been out in Europe for quite some time. I feel like I remember seeing Fumée Volcanique when I was in Italy 2 years ago in a shop. So I think they hit over there first, but don't hold me to that. But I think I recall that. Anyway, let us know what you think of these rums. Get in your jokes about my performance on this one. You can send those to host@rumcast.com. That's HOST@rumcast.com. Or you can post them publicly for all the world to see on social media. John, where can they find us on social media?
At the Rumcast, we're on Facebook, Threads, Twitter, and Instagram. So all of those platforms, we are pushing our new releases, and look for comments there. So, leave a comment. Tell us, like you said. Yeah, YouTube. Don't forget about YouTube. You want to see.
Watch the videos, baby.
Will's disappointment as we revealed this time, then go to YouTube and watch the video of it.
Gonna punish myself for weeks after this one. So I've got to get back in the lab, as they say. I've got to work and improve and get better. So, all right, that's enough for this episode. We will see you all next time. Until then, cheers.
Cheers.